Paul Young, Every Time You Go Away on BBC Lincolnshire. Now, it's Monday evening. On Mondays, we talk about the latest techie news. Tonight, we're talking about VONGA. Yeah, never heard of VONGA. Well, I'd never heard of VONGA. And also, again, we look at the whole issue of broadband access in rural areas, like in Lincolnshire. When we spoke about this last time, when we got people to just send in what sort of speeds they were getting, it was just awful. It was just ridiculous. Our guest tonight is Trefor Davies, who runs business ISP in Newark, Timico, and is also on the board of the ISP Association. So this is internet service providers, all the big ones that we would have heard about. You sit around a table.
And Timico.
And Timico, absolutely. And you sit around a table with them. Hey, you're Welsh. What are you doing here? You should be out celebrating St David's Day.
Well, I've eaten my daffodil and my leek. So
Can't do a lot
I thought I better have something else to do.
Let's talk about, we'll get on to broadband in rural areas, which is always a big issue in just a moment, but let's talk about VONGA first. Now, listen, I don't know whether you've just made that up. I've heard of VoIP. VoIP is Voice over Internet Protocol, and lots of businesses will be running on VoIP, lots of homes will be running on VoIP now. That's how they can make their telephone calls. What's VONGA?
Well, you know what? First of all, it's a better acronym than VoIP, isn't it? I mean, it rolls off the tongue. And it's quite a new acronym in that I don't think very many people outside of the industry will have heard it. VONGA is actually Voice over Next Generation Access, right? Which sounds a little bit wishy-washy, doesn't it? I mean, what is Next Generation Access? Yeah,
it sounds like anybody could have made that up, even though we don't know what the next generation is yet.
My big worry is that when BT come to taking it out to production, that they'll turn it into a user-friendly, customer-facing name rather than a great name like VONGA, which you can do lots of things with. But, I mean, BT... Timico is a BT partner, okay, so BT spend all the money rolling out the network and we sell it, basically manage it. And BT has invested billions over the last 5, 6, 7 years in what people may know as the 21CN network, the 21st Century Network. And so they're very keen...
Sorry, I was going to say, is that improving areas that they already have then? Is that improving
it basically makes it cheaper for them to run the network, and also means they can run new services and faster broadband. So all this new broadband, up to 24 megabits per second broadband, that runs on their 21CN network, okay? Now, they spent all these billions, but of course they've still got a huge investment in all telephone exchanges, all the copper, all this. Some of these copper lines have been in the ground or on the telegraph pole for 30, 40, 50 years or more, right? And it's all starting to fall apart, and BT wants to plan to move everybody away from the old copper to the new. The new is fibre, okay, so bits of glass in the ground, and fibre has properties that make it much better than copper. Whenever there's a storm, electrical storm, or a lot of rain or wind, Timico gets a huge increase in the number of complaints about broadband or their phone lines. And that's because copper does not like water, right? But you can run fibre in your bath, if you like, and it'll still work okay, right? So BT wants to move people away from copper to fibre. Now, the problem they've got is they ain't ready to do it yet. They have to completely change all the telephone exchanges over and so on. And the last thing they want to do is in a new greenfield site, so if somebody's building a housing estate on the edge of town or even a new town, last thing they want to do is build an old-fashioned telephone exchange there. So they've come up with what's called VONGA, Voice over Next Generation Access. To these new places, they will run fibre without no copper, and it'll be fibre to the premises, so people will be able to get really, really high-speed broadband. Like we're talking 100 megabits per second instead of, I don't know what you say your survey resulted in.
Oh, it was just 0.6 if you're lucky in some cases. So,
you'll be able to get fantastic speed broadbands, and you'll be able to run voice over using voice over IP, VoIP, as you mentioned before. And the idea is that they don't want to invest in new infrastructure, whichever way around you want to look at it, and they want to put fibre in the ground. So that, of course, is just them experimenting or getting the basic technology into place, so that when they do get rid of all these old telephone exchanges, they've had all the work done so that they can put fibre everywhere. Now, it's not an overnight process. Well,
when you're talking about putting fibre everywhere, is that are they actually having to run fibre
That's what they physically
every
do, yeah.
single property.
That's what they will do. I mean,
And they're not going to take that underground to every single property.
well, that's how it usually goes. Yeah.
So do all the telephone poles go?
They will all go eventually.
They're not going to use them to run fibre over land. I mean, that would probably be a cheaper option.
Currently, it's all underground, right? But they had a big announcement last year of a £1.5 billion investment to put the first chunk of fibre into people's premises, and it started off actually with what's called fibre to the cabinet. So if you walk along the street, you'll see a green box about a metre high, and actually that's your telephone contact to the telephone exchanges, and all the stuff from the poles comes into that and goes back. So now people can get, if available in your area, and not very many areas are available, you can get 40 megabits per second broadband, because they've effectively brought the fibre to that cabinet and brought the exchange closer to you, right? Because the speed of your broadband is a function of how far you are from the exchange, right? So the next step on from that is to actually run the fibre all the way. And the benefits of that is they get rid of the copper completely. They don't have to worry about maintaining it. Because in the whole BT network, remember there are about 8 million broadband lines out there. They get tens of thousands of faults every month. Tens of thousands is a huge cost to them. And so by putting fibre in as a long-term thing, they can get rid of that cost.
That's such a massive project. I mean, you can see, it needs to be done. We need to move forward. It's not new technology even now, is it?
I've got a little quiz for you here.
Oh, go on.
How much fibre do you think BT already has in the ground?
How much have they already got in the ground?
Already.
I have no idea. I don't know.
They have 12 million kilometres of it in the ground. I was flabbergasted, but I did some work last week just for a blog post on Trefor.net, and 12 million. So there's an awful lot of stuff there already, and it's the way the whole world's moving. And 12
can
million.
they go through, like we sometimes hear other people experimenting with? Can they go, if they need to put it underground? Can they go through holes that are already there? Can they put it through your water pipes and things like that?
Yeah, they can do. Yeah, in fact. Maybe a bit of an unsavoury aside, but I went on a tour of the sewers in London last year just to see the fibre networks, because it was a really cheap and easy way of running a fibre network around London. So even through the Olympic Village, there's a sewer that goes right through where the Olympics are, and there's a whole thick wad of fibres that you couldn't get your hand around, not that you'd want to in the sewer. Where all the connectivity is, yeah. So and in fact, it was only last week that Ian Livingston, who's the chief executive officer of BT, said we will share our ducts with other competitive service providers like NTL, Virgin, whatever they're called these days. Of course, in exchange, he wants to be able to use their ducts, which seems fair to me. But it's certainly the holes in the ground is one of the biggest costs of rolling this network out. And it might have been the year before now, when the government came out with what's called the Digital Britain Report, which being a Twitterer, you'll have seen lots of stuff flying around on. They calculated the rough cost of putting fibre to every premises as £29 billion, but 24 billion of that was just digging up the roads.
Really?
Yeah.
Isn't that mad? So more sharing of holes in the ground?
Yeah, that's the answer. That's got to be some creativity there.
It's even daft, isn't it? When if you look at areas like Lincoln, when years ago Diamond Cable came in and dug up the road to put cable TV, and then it got taken over by NTL and now Virgin. But there are new estates popping up in Lincoln all the time that don't have it.
That's right.
We see that doesn't make sense, does it? They're brand new, but nobody's extending the cable network. I
mean, I'm a bit of an internet type, right? But if I was looking for somewhere to live now, knowing what I know, I would have to find somewhere which had the connectivity. All my 4 kids, they're on iPlayer, they're on Xbox Live, they're on this, that, and Facebook. They're using it all the time. If they didn't have the internet, it would be all hell would break loose, wouldn't it? My wife wouldn't be able to check her eBay status and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, it would be awful. I can't imagine your house without the connectivity.
Have to talk to each other.
but you're right. You think that buying a brand new house these days would be it, but what you're talking about is BT starting now to think, right.
Yeah, but it's not a quick process.
We need to start getting that in place. All right, stay with us. We'll talk about other broadband issues in rural areas like Lincolnshire.